Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Link Through Social podcast. We're on episode number 15. That's right, episode 15 this week, a special bonus episode. And we have a wonderful guest for you, Chris Cannon from M2MMA. Now, Chris will be joining us to explain how M2MMA is utilizing artificial intelligence and blockchain technology to create a new era of smarter, safer, and more engaging combat sports. It's a great topic, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Thank you once again, everybody, all our viewers and listeners, for downloading, sharing, and subscribing. We appreciate your support, and we hope you enjoy this bonus episode. It will start right after this brief message from our sponsor.
Tired of stressing over what to post on social media? Meet Smart Post App, your all-in-one solution to create, schedule, and grow your content effortlessly. In just a few taps, you can generate engaging posts, stay consistent, and keep your audience coming back for more. No more guessing, no more burnout, just smarter content, faster. Whether you're a business owner, creator, or an entrepreneur, Smart Post helps you show up like a pro. Start posting smarter today at smartpostapp.com. Smart Post App, because your content should work for you.
And welcome back to the Link Through Social podcast, where we explore social media, technology, AI, and innovative businesses that are changing the way we live and work. Now, today we're diving into the future of combat sports with Chris Cannon from M2MMA. M2MMA is utilizing artificial intelligence and blockchain technology to create a new era of smarter, safer, more engaging combat sports. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Paul. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Now, Chris, before we get started, maybe you can just tell us, our viewers and listeners, a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll get into the M2MMA.
Not a problem. And I have a somewhat untraditional background for someone who's working in combat sports, believe it or not. But my life has been sports. But prior to taking on this role, I was a professional golfer for 14 years. And I played in over 30 countries around the world across many different golf tours. Never quite got to the level when I wanted to be at, is the reality of it. It was always my passion to be number one golfer in the world. But if I look back, sport has always been my life. From the earliest age I can remember, I wanted to be a professional athlete. And that was in football, that was rugby, that was cricket, that was tennis, that was motor racing, that was anything I could think of. Everything. I wanted to be the man in the arena. I wanted to have thousands of people cheering me on and so on. But eventually landed on golf. But combat sports has always been a massive passion of mine. So, growing up in the 90s, boxing was flourishing in the UK. We had people like Lennox Lewis, Frank Bruno, both fought Mike Tyson, someone in his heyday. We had Prince Nassim Hamed. So boxing, has always been a fan of that from a very young age. Then when I actually moved to the United States in 2005 to pursue professional golf, went to college over there at Wake Forest University. I was actually introduced to MMA in the UFC, which at the time was the first series of The Ultimate Fighter.
Yes.
And my first strength and conditioning coaches, these Canadian chaps from Montreal, actually, Andy Moran and Paul Gagnier, they introduced me to the UFC, and the Ultimate Fighter was ongoing at that point, and I've been a massive fan ever since. So, yeah, combat sports, for me, I'd much rather watch a fight than I would watch a golf tournament, that's for sure. Yes. And so when the founder of M2MMA, CEO Jeff Robinson, introduced me to M2MMA and his long-term vision of utilizing AI technology to improve athlete safety and performance, for me, it was a no-brainer. Like, I'd been at golf for a long time, hadn't reached the levels I wanted to reach. Yes, it was tough giving it up, but the opportunity to move into a sport I was really passionate about and that was very much centered on athlete well-being. For me, I jumped at the opportunity, and I know it's what I want to do for the next 30 years of my life and build a great company that helps athletes around the world.
That's amazing story. And yes, artificial intelligence is becoming part of, every industry. And so how is AI being integrated into M2MMA? specifically, combat sports.
You're spot on. And to be quite frank, 2.5 years ago, I wouldn't be able to tell you much about AI, but obviously I've learned very fast and very quick from experts like Jeff Robinson. We also have, head of Google AI and machine learning on our board, Tiago Enriquez, and Gary Zavaleta as well. So for me, it's been a very quick and I must say an incredible learning curve about the opportunity AI presents for us in society. And especially in sport, it's something I'd never previously thought about. But when Jeff introduced the concept of if we collect the right data in combat sports, right, and we're talking about longitudinal medical history, we're talking about real-time impact monitoring, athlete training data, AI affords us the opportunity to correlate that data and to actually deliver insights on how to optimize training and recovery. So that's how we're utilizing AI in M2MMA. And it starts really with the foundational data layer, which is the M2 Intel Combat Sports Operating System. That's where all our data feeds into that system, and the AI runs through that and delivers the athletes, the regulators, the insights on how to again improve performance and safety protocols.
Right. Now, you mentioned the board on M2MMA. What does that look like? You have several different experts from different fields. Why don't you tell us about that?
That's correct. So, when you go in, and I like to always think in terms of sports, as you probably can imagine, if you've heard so far, right? So I think if you're going to go ahead and build a great team, and you mentioned the World Cup just before we jumped on here, taking place in Toronto. If you're going to build a great team in any sport, you need the key players in different positions because everyone has different strengths, different weaknesses, but you put them in the right position to build a great team. So that's what Jeff has done with M2MMA, and we talk about, for example, combat sports regulation. In the last time's moving quickly. Last 7 months now, we've had Dr. Michael Schwartz, the co-chair of the ABC Medical Committee. He founded the Association of Ringside Physicians. He came to us actually wanting to know how we were going to use AI to improve athlete safety in combat sports. And once he understood our vision and our plan to get there, we immediately integrated him to the board, and he's been a fantastic addition in many regards. And his guidance has helped us significantly, without a doubt. And then from there, we had Michael Mazzulli, the former ABC president, has also joined our board, which again, if you want to understand what combat sports regulation looks like and the intricacies of how we're going to integrate our platform and our technology into combat sports, these are the kind of gentlemen that gives us that direct pathway and information how to go ahead and execute on this, right? And then Big John McCarthy, obviously legendary MMA referee, has also joined our board. Yeah, so again, from the official standpoint, how can officials utilize this kind of technology, right? But also, if you want a man who's seen probably more up close combat throughout their lives, there's probably no better man than John McCarthy, right? He's been there since day one of the UFC, seen everything there is to see across MMA and boxing. He also sits on the officials committee for the ABC as well. And again, the kind of insights that he's able to deliver us to help build this technology and deliver it, that's why these board members are so important. But they're not just names that sit there to give us credibility, as of many, often boards are created in that kind of structure. They are actually giving us direct insights on how to deliver on what we're building. So, and also, so that's on the combat sports regulatory side of things. We have people like Dr. Thomas Bottolieri. He's the chief of sports medicine physicians at Columbia University. Right? I mean, what an incredible institution that is. And he's a concussion expert. If you want to understand, so we have that direct expertise there. Dr. Carl Daigle, functional neurologist, is involved with some incredible work, in terms, again, around concussion, athlete injury, and so on, and using innovative technologies provides us a huge amount of insight on that front as well. And then we start to look at AI. I mentioned Tiago, I mentioned Gary, Jeff Robinson, obviously, in his former life as well. He's got an incredible background in being involved with IBM and Watson, and so his expertise there. And then from the athlete performance side of things, we go back to Chris McCormack, John Stephenson, Olympic medalists, world triathlon champions. So again, we cover all bases because this is the platform we're building. It's an ecosystem that covers everything. You need the expertise in the different areas, as I mentioned, the sports team analogy, that can help us deliver on what we're building. Because it's all well and good having a vision, but you need the right people in the right places to actually be able to go ahead and execute on that. And exactly what we've built with our advisory board.
Right. Yeah, you built a stacked board there with people from all different sides of the spectrum. Now, you mentioned about concussions. That's been a very concerning thing for fans and obviously the athletes. Could AI one day help detect dangerous trends, about from head trauma, fatigue, injury risks?
That is very much the goal, Paul. I think the,
Mm,
the point is we know concussions is a real issue in impact sports, right? But at the moment, there's many different potential influencing factors. And we look at combat sports in particular, I think one of the biggest areas is things like sparring. The
mhm.
reality is the majority of head impacts an athlete will take is subconcussive impacts in sparring.
Yes.
So again, having this platform where an athlete can track their sparring data, even to start with, as simply as like how many rounds did I spar this week? What kind of intensity was I looking at? And then we can build layers of additional data on top of that as we add in, our real-time impact monitoring technology as well. We correlate that with other metrics like, heart rate variability. We correlate that with, nutrition, all these different. That's when we can start to learn. Okay, well, actually, what is an athlete's optimal sparring protocol? At the moment, it's based on experience, but it's not backed by data and it's not individualized because the reality is everyone is different. What
Of
might be
course.
right for Paul is not right for Chris, and
Hmm.
this is what the platform has been built to deliver. And then over time, we can start to, take those data points, take the trend analysis, and actually inform, okay, what are the risks involved here? Give some kind of, risk, and that's where we envision it certainly, and
Yes.
deliver the athlete the kind of information that they can say to actually, we're seeing this trend develops. That you can plug into the AI, for example. I don't know if you're aware of the digital twin concept, right? So this is
Hmm.
your
I am
that
actually.
you can say,
Hmm.
okay, yeah. So you can say, okay, cool. If I adjusted my sparring protocol, if I adjusted my nutritional recovery protocol, if I integrated this kind of technology or a partner that we may work with, how might that affect my digital twins performance in my fight 2 months down the line? Another one is weight cutting. So we've had
Right.
extensive discussions, internally around this, obviously with our esteemed advisory board members.
Yes.
And another part of the M2MMA ecosystem is the M2 Lab. And the M2 Lab is around research and development of technology. So,
Oh.
and one of the things we've looked at, I think there's a lot of anecdotal evidence potentially around the risk of TBI associated with dehydration. So,
Hmm.
again, how can we help support an athlete find their optimal weight? How can we support their weight cutting process that may reduce the risk of TBI? Is there a link there between dehydration and TBI? Got to go ahead and do the research. We've got to figure this out. And that's again, the
Right.
data platform provides us that foundation where we can take all that data, also have a living lab environment, work with a lab environment as well. Because again, someone like Thomas Bottiglieri he actually runs his own lab at Columbia University. So again, we have
Yes.
that direct expertise in how to set up a lab, how to do research projects. So it's really all about, you say, in the end, we want to be able to give the athletes the kind of insights you mentioned and also the regulators, the information that enables them to improve protocols around safety, but also to improve protocols around performance. Because
Hmm.
you may find that actually the weight that you think you're best at is not the weight you're best at, right?
Right.
And John McCarthy gave a very good anecdotal story about this the other day. He said he was refereeing an event in PFL Ireland recently, and he was refereeing a fight, and one fight in particular he'd been in the middle of the cage before a number of times beforehand. I'm not obviously going to go into names here, but he referenced the fact
Sure.
that previously they were a little chinny. He described them as, which is
Mm.
that they he'd seen them go down from strikes perhaps, and this is something he also referenced in Dr. Schwartz as well. Sometimes you see fighters go down from strikes are fairly innocuous, but why is that, right?
Right.
And simply he referenced this one as well. But he said this guy came in somewhat late notice, had to fight up a couple of weight classes, and performed the best he'd seen him perform. Like
Hmm.
he's as good as he'd ever looked. And perhaps that was because he'd been fighting at a weight he should never been fighting at. And
Right.
this is the kind of information we'd like to be able to deliver athletes to again improve their performance, but also protect them.
Important. I'm just really admiring what your whole your whole plan is for the MMA world because I think for too long we've seen some recurring injuries and something similar in fighters and that. And now by putting all this together and research, so is your plan to partner with some of these major MMA groups? Are you planning on maybe putting on your own events as well, branching off in doing that? What is the plan as far as that's concerned?
Okay, so number one, that we will work with all combat sports organizations. I say we are building the operating system for combat sports. So that's including your medical end-to-end sanctioning, that's including event management suites, everything you need to run your combat sports event as a promoter, as a regulator, and as an athlete, a coach, official, all be integrated in the platform. Because also we want to make this sport more commercially viable. I don't think people really understand, unless you're involved in the sport, how complex and how time-consuming and costly it is to run a combat sports event. So even aside from the athlete safety perspective, which is obviously a benefit of doing this, we're making the sports more commercially viable. So yes, we want all promoters to be operating on our platform, all organizations. But number one, from a regulatory standpoint, again, working with commissions in the United States, federations around the world, associations across professional and amateur combat sports, is the first priority. Then we're looking at, again, partnerships, which we've had discussions already with potential, organizations like promotions. For example, giving their athletes free access to the platform and the promoter free access to the platform so they can monitor their athletes, right? So if you want to take care of your athlete in between the event, not just the fight week, post-fight week, if you want to look after your prized assets, the most valuable part of your promotion, the M2 Intel platform can help you do that, right? Who are the people we want to work with initially to get them, partner up with, to give them preferred access to this? That's one thing we're looking at currently.
Amazing.
And then, sorry, I think I forgot the last part of your question, but yes, answer that. Yes. Oh, your events. Sorry, you mentioned M2MMA events. So yes. So obviously, as you well know, like we have held M2MMA events previously. Very much the platform to present who we are and what we do, to gain a following, to enable us to, to showcase our long-term mission. But the M2MMA events will be the showcase for our technology, right? So it enables us to have a platform when we come out with prototypes with the real-time impact monitoring technology, the AI run through the platform. We have an event to showcase that, right? To tell the story of the athlete going through the training camp, to tell them post-training camp, all different intricacies of it enables us to have control of that marketing to a certain extent, and also put on great fights and showcase how technology can be integrated into these events like never been seen before. So that is another core component of the M2MMA ecosystem for sure.
Very exciting. Now blockchain technology, it's often misunderstood. How is M2MMA using blockchain technology in a practical way?
Yeah, and again, this is another thing, Paul, that 2.5 years ago I would have had absolutely no idea about. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's speed of light.
For sure, and we're seeing things like the crypto thing going on, and for myself, so I had heard the name and I hear bits and bobs, but again, I'm very fortunate to work with much smarter people than I am. People, Jeff, for example, he understands it implicitly, but also another advisory board member, which I failed to mention in that earlier list because now's the time to mention him, is Dragan Zeljic. So Dragan, international lawyer, so he understands cross-jurisdiction law, which is a very important thing when we start to talk about data privacy policy on a platform like ours, right? And also when you get into blockchain, Dragan is a doctor himself because he did his thesis in blockchain technology, right? So if we're going to build something on the blockchain, you need an expert like Dragan Zeljic. So again, the right players in the right position. So for us, we started about combat sports, and we started about medical, we started about record keeping and so on. As I'm sure you're aware, like it's a little bit of a disjointed system currently. And especially when if you're going to start doing research and generate AI analytics from medical data, that needs to be verifiable and it needs to have a history of it. And this is what blockchain provides us with. It provides that verifiable history for data. Now, one of the interesting parts of it, however, and the complexities of what we're building is the fact that obviously privacy laws around the world, some of them mean that you can, data can be deleted, right? That's why we've been very specific in terms of building this with, again, Dragan's support. And we're very fortunate to have a man like him on board to develop these policies in a pathway, for example, where things like medical data and data AI is trained upon is actually split apart and de-identified from the name of which it's attached, right? So we have incorporated all of that system, and we've thought about it very deeply, because this is not a 2, 3, 4 year project. This is a 20-year project to really change sports as a whole, combat sports specifically, because of the risk of head injuries and all the different aspects of where the opportunity lies to really change the game in this respect, to improve commercial viability, improve corporate governance structures behind combat sports. So we've thought about this long and hard, and we've created a very strong plan, and we're executing it right now.
That's very, very exciting. And Chris, it's been a fascinating conversation. The combination of AI, blockchain, combat sports, it's something many people haven't considered. And it sounds like M2MMA is working to build a smarter, safer, interactive future for athletes and promoters. I am involved in the MMA world, and it's tough out there for the promoters for many different reasons. And this platform that you're putting together is good for the fighters, good for the promoters, and the fans. It's very exciting, and I really appreciate you joining us today. For those wanting to learn more about M2 MMA online and follow the journey, where can they find you?
Yeah, well, thank you, Paul, for having me on, and I appreciate your interest in what we're doing. I think that is the point, that it is a win for all stakeholders. And I think a lot of
Yes.
people don't appreciate how hard it is to run these events for
Hmm.
promoters. And
Yeah,
the more
very
commercially
difficult.
viable and the easier we can run these events, the more money can end up in the athletes' pockets, right? And even the
Yes.
platform as itself provides an opportunity to put things like sponsorships and partners directly with athletes, and to give athletes improved access to different, for example, our partners that we work with, Brain and Performance Center, Neuro Solution, Green Hill Sports, IAFNA we recently partnered with, Resonate, to create this ecosystem where it's a value exchange for everybody involved and everyone wins. So yeah, we're working very hard on that, and we appreciate people like yourselves giving us the opportunity to speak about it. In terms of where can people learn more about M2MMA, of course, m2mma.com.
Yes.
We're on across all of social media at M2MMA Official. And also, many people may not know we're also a publicly traded company, which is another very important aspect of
Hmm.
what we're building, because it enables, number one, transparency, right? If you want to
100%.
know, everything's there. You want to know about M2MMA, it's a public company. We're building this big long-term project of addressing some very important issues. We're a public company. Also, if you want to support the company, again, the opportunity is invested there as well.
Yes.
So again,
Yes.
people can get behind our mission. And I think a lot of people are very passionate and care about this. So again, we've afforded them the opportunity to play a role in that. So yeah, that's the kind of, to conclude on that. We're here there. And if you want to reach out to me and get in touch and want to learn more on any of what I've spoken about today, please go ahead and do so. I'm always available.
Chris Cannon, it's been a pleasure. And yes, we are going to follow your journey. And I would love to have you on the show maybe later this year, just because we just mentioned everything is moving so quickly. I'm sure you'll have more to report to us the next time around. Chris Canyon, I appreciate it. M2MMA.com is the website. The Link Through Social podcast will be back right after this. Well, that does it for episode number 15, the bonus episode of the Link Through Social podcast. What a great interview with Chris Cannon. They are doing amazing work at M2MMA, just fascinating. And like I said, I hope to have them on again later this year as their journey continues. It's just an incredible mandate that they have. And it's something I'm sure that all of you will be interested to see how things progress. Now, if you want Link Through Social to become your social media partner for an MMA event, also we do pro wrestling, boxing, other combat sports, sporting events, music festivals, expos, and food festivals. Link Through Social can be your social media partner. Go to linkthroughsocial, that's THRU.com, for more information and to contact us on becoming your social media partner. The Link Through Social podcast We'll be back next week with episode 16 on Thursday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Once again, thanks for downloading, sharing. Keep that up. We are building a wonderful community here, and you can find all the links to where you can watch or listen to the Link Through Social podcast at linkthroughsocialpodcast.com. Until next week, my name is Paul Wright. Have a great week.